Good morning, everybody, and welcome to The Artist Well. This is our 87th episode, and I'm delighted this morning to have Brian Maguire with me, and I'm actually in Brian's studio. But before we chat to him, as usual, I always mention people who we've featured before who have something happening during the week. And the only one that I'm familiar with, because I do rely on people telling me, is Bridget Flannery, who's got a solo exhibition in the Solomon Gallery starting at 6 o'clock this Thursday. And I certainly intend to be there. It's going to be a wonderful exhibition, so I would recommend you go to that. We're going to start off in an unusual way. I normally start with people I chat to about their childhood and then sort of work my way up. But with Brian, I think I'm going to do the opposite way around, where I'm going to start with what is he doing now, and then work backwards as to what inspired him to get where he was or where he is today, and what's the future hold for him as well. And I thought that maybe to set the scene that I would actually show a video, and I'm indebted to Julia in the Rona Hoffman Gallery in Chicago, and also Clara in the Fergus McCaffrey Gallery in New York. I'm dropping names, yes, I know, but it's very impressive, for their thanks in both supplying the video and a number of the images that I've been using. So many thanks to them, and I'm sure they'll check in later on at the video. And on that point, actually, if you haven't already subscribed to the YouTube channel, please do so. We've over 1,000 subscribers now, and we celebrated passing the 50,000 view mark on Friday. So I think it's 50,102 or something crazy now, which is fantastic, really, really wonderful. And it's great for the artists being featured because they continue to be viewed right throughout the year and into the future, which is wonderful. So without further ado, let's go to that video and take a look at it. So bear with me while we screen share and get that video up for you. I would recommend that you put your volume up when you're watching this, so that you can hear it properly. Or if you've got headphones, even better.
You can't allow stuff like this to happen without the story being told. And that to me became my understanding of the role of an artist. My name is Brian Maguire. This is my first solo show with Rona Hoffman Gallery. The title is War Changes Its Address and Other Stories. The show is drawn from 3 projects. The first one is to do with Juarez. This project involved visiting and interviewing families over an extended period of time. Nature Mort is a head in the center of a canvas with no body. This man was murdered and dismembered, and he ended up in the yard behind a mortuary. You know, I didn't wish to show the brutality that was done to him. I wished to show the beauty of this man. And I think I did. I think it's one of the most beautiful paintings I've ever made. I know that sounds like self-praise, which should be avoided, but it's what happened to me. I grew to like this man when I was doing it. I always remember the transformation was in me, not in him. As the picture went on, and I felt satisfied with it, that I had an image. He stands for everybody that's been killed in this fucking drug war. Guilty or innocent is irrelevant. The next project I did was I went to Damascus and to Aleppo and Homs in 2017. I had gone because I couldn't make sense out of what I was reading in the New York Times and in other very respectable journals. You can't believe anything. You can only believe what you see. But because what you see is such a small amount of the totality of the reality, even that you can't believe. So you're left with the memory of a series of individual people that I met on that journey. When you talk about paintings, I might talk about what the painting taught me, rather than stuff like what colour I used or whatever. One of them in particular, Aleppo 3, is the one where the image of the building became a carcass, which is really what I learned, the way this city had gone. And I thought that was a revelation of the effect of war in an urban environment. Aleppo is one of the oldest cities in the world. And you begin to ask yourself, was there not another way? Could we have found another way to resolve this besides dropping munitions from the sky, you know? The last project is from South Sudan, again, an area where civil war had ensued following, basically there was a resistance movement to North Sudan. People fled to the UN. The UN provided protection camps. So it was to one of those camps I went, in Bentiu, which is in the middle of the country. The images that I've painted are the ones which seem to me to contain as much information about the story as they could. When all the rest fail, when your Justice Department and everything else that is supposed to hold the story of the unfair death, when they all fail, the only one left is the poet, the journalist, the filmmaker. More odd, the painter. It's harder for me because this is an 18th century product that I work with. Nonetheless, it's my product, it's my skill, and I use it to tell these stories.
Thanks very much for inviting me into your studio this morning. It's a real pleasure to be here, and thanks for giving us the time.
Not at all.
Yeah. Let's talk about what you've done in the past while, because of late, I know you did the Aleppo series.
Yeah, that was in 2017-18.
Oh, was it? Okay. Yeah. But more recently, what was your more recent project?
My most recent project, which we have two images of, is for the Kerlin Gallery in March.
Mm-hmm.
It's based upon a trip I made in it was in April and May in the Amazon region of I visited the rainforest in Brazil. I went there. I was probably prompted by Ed Villami, who has written quite a number of catalogues, but is better known as a journalist who writes on war. He wrote on the Balkans, and he's currently in Ukraine. But Ed was saying to me, the war on the world is where his heart rested, which is the war against the natural world, which was being conducted in the Amazon under the previous president. So I went there with the assistance and encouragement of Pat Clark, a priest that I'd worked with in São Paulo. I was asked about the project. We travelled to Manaus, which is a city in the middle of the Amazon, and travelled by various boats, which began as car ferries and ended up as curraghs with a seagull engine, and when travelled to visit villages of indigenous people from the Maru tribe or Maru nation, who and indeed met their leadership. We were going there to see what how the deforestation was affecting the local people, because we know how it affects the rest of us in the world. And I was interested in that voice, which didn't seem to be. I never read it anywhere. And again, it what interests me in this world is what's glossed over. And in this, so we went there and collected the stories, and in the end, the paintings which I will show in the Kerlin Gallery consists of 4 large works. The first is of the beauty of the place, which is stunning. The second is of it on fire. The third, which is yet to be completed, is a clear cut of a hill of forestry. And the fourth is a rubbish dump in an industrial area where there's a young man, a young boy actually, scavenging. Now, I saw that boy 20 years ago in the rubbish dump, which is right beside the international airport in São Paulo. This work stands for what happens to the indigenous people when they leave, when they're driven out of where they live. And they live very well and very comfortably, to a certain extent. There has been schools were built by Lula's first administrations, but the money for the school dinner was stolen by the administration that has just stopped, by the local administration. So the kids would only come for 2 hours to the school because they needed to eat.
Yes,
they had to go back to their homes.
Brian, the reason you go out to these places is because haven't you discovered over the years that when we hear stories on the media, very often they bear absolutely no relation to what is actually happening on the ground. I mean, for instance, you told me the other day a story about a soldier. Would you tell that? Because that's really interesting.
Yeah, I was here in my home, which is next door, watching BBC television, just when the Syrian Arab army took over Aleppo, and the Islamists went on buses to Idlib. In the center of Aleppo, it's wrecked. It's not completely destroyed, but every building is damaged. And there was a picture on the television of a Russian soldier spraying some stuff on a wall. And the commentator said, here we have the Russian soldier celebrating his victory in Aleppo by graffitiing the wall. That was fine. We all accepted it. I did anyway, whatever. But when I got to Aleppo, I found the piece of graffiti. It was still there, and discovered what it was. It was a public health warning to say that the space underneath this writing had been checked and was cleared of mines. So there you are.
Yeah.
That's the Western report of a war in Syria.
But I think they also said that the entire sort of ancient city of Aleppo was destroyed.
No, that's not the case.
No,
the middle-class districts were never touched by either combatants. It was a section which included the citadel and the main mosque.
Yes,
which are phenomenal places. The citadel is still there. The mosque is completely destroyed. Yeah. But these were ancient buildings. I mean, they say Damascus is older, but I think, is it 7,000 years old?
I guess so. I guess so. Yeah.
We have nothing of that time.
Yes, I know.
We have nothing here.
Yes. So is this something that you've been following all your life? I mean, looking for areas where there's been inequality, all sorts of dreadful scenarios.
Yeah, I mean, inequality has been what has interested me. I described the role of art. I mean, I got a little bit more civilized as I get older. But when I was younger, I said it was an act of revenge.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Because it told the truth. And what better way of getting revenge than telling the truth of what's happening? Exactly. So yes, I saw it as that. It's very hard to tell lies in painting. It just doesn't work.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Most painters would understand that.
Sure.
But yeah. It's much easier to tell them with cameras and with text.
Yes, and a lot of your work is actually quite difficult to see, isn't it?
Yeah,
in the sense of of the sort of emotions it conveys.
Well, the work is made. I mean, interestingly enough, since I think 1997, most of my work has been dealing with the dead.
Yeah.
In one form or other. Sometimes as memory, sometimes as observation.
Yes.
And that's I've become interested in the unfair killings.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or not all killings, some are death by natural, but a project I did with Crawford Gallery of Art in Cork, they published it, was a project based on police photographs in the Arizona desert of Central Americans who had died of natural causes while trying to cross the desert.
Exactly.
And there's we're talking about 140 a year. And I was given access to, I think he must have, the head doctor in the mortuary gave me access to files, I think 400
really
images, of which I put 90 on a stick and brought back home with me and used them as the basis for the paintings. They're very tough. Some of them are in private. I know. Are any of them in private? No, I think they're all in public collections, which is really where the work is for. It's of a scale. It's not of a scale for domestic.
Sort of historical document, really. Isn't it?
Well,
documentation.
It's interesting. Laura Marlowe, who writes in the Irish Times from Paris, told me that photographs she was looking for, which she knew were there, she had seen them, after 7 years, found them very hard to locate. And so that inspired me, because paintings, if they're collected, if they're held in public collections, well, they will always be there.
Yes, exactly.
And they are accessible. So,
but you kind of go to extremes for your art, in the sense that and there was another film I watched, I think made by Concern, about you going off bringing water and making water stations around the desert.
I know.
Is that not it?
No, you're mixing up.
Oh, right, sorry.
But you're doing good.
Thanks.
The water stations were from Arizona.
Yes.
From that project.
Right.
I was working on it, and but the South Sudan was the area I went with Concern.
Okay.
But it's very easy to
mix them up.
They're probably very similar latitude.
And
the vegetation be similar.
But I mean, you really get down into the thick of it.
Yeah, you have
at a degree of personal risk, I would have.
Not really, very. I mean, it's not to say that you're not frightened where you're going. In Juarez, in 2010, it was the most dangerous city in the world. But the chances of a bullet finding the likes of me, who was just there to investigate, to talk to families whose daughters were killed. I mean, I've had protocols that I obeyed.
Sure.
And so I kept out of trouble.
And those portraits that you did, and we'll see, I think, examples of them. Do you then give them to the family?
Yeah, well, I'm always if I make a drawing of somebody, I'll always make two.
Yes.
Or a portrait or whatever, and keep one for the public show and give one to the people who sit there. I did that in South Sudan. I do it everywhere.
Do you? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, Brian, I think we'll show some of your work.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, it would be better.
Because at that point, I want to kind of move back in time.
Yeah. Mostly because this is what we were talking about going to the Amazon. And and here is it's a 3 meter by 3 meter painting of a tree. And it just, for me, it carried, I was interested in the beauty of the place. So, and then the next one is again, if it's about a third of the way in
Mhm.
from the left, looking at the picture, there is a figure there.
Yes.
I don't know if it's visible.
Oh, yeah, should be. Yeah.
You can sometimes photographs of images distort what's going on in them.
Mhm.
But there is, in this black landscape, there is a figure standing there. And that was a boy, an image of a boy I saw about 20 years ago
Mhm.
in a rubbish dump beside the international airport in Sao Paulo.
Yes.
I can only remember the GRU or GNU is the symbol for the airport.
For the airport. Oh,
I don't
yes.
remember its name.
Yeah, yeah.
But here was the trucks came continuously
Mhm.
to this landfill. It was on fire. The
Mhm.
ground was on fire. The kid was as black, completely black.
Yeah.
You know, as a kid, I used to play in the dump in Bray.
Yeah.
And we would come home to my mother completely black. I remember this.
Yes.
You know, so this child there was a hut there his family had on top of the burning ground.
Mhm.
And they scavenged for food.
Yeah.
This to me was just the worst thing I'd ever seen in the world.
Mhm.
And what struck me about that kid came from the Amazon, most likely.
Yes. Exactly.
That's
Yeah,
where
displaced.
the people come from. Go back to the picture before. That from there and now go back.
There to there.
Yeah, that's the reality.
Yes.
Of clearance.
Mhm.
You know what I talked about? We know the reality of the damage to the oxygen level in the world.
Yeah.
Or the ozone level.
Mhm.
But this is what happens to the people.
Appalling.
And anyway, so there you go.
Yeah.
Those works will be on show in the Kerlin Gallery from the 3rd of March for about a month, a bit over a month.
Okay.
And I would invite personally people that are viewing this to come.
Lovely. Oh, we'll definitely take you up on that, Brian.
Yeah,
definitely.
Okay. Here is one of the last pictures I made in the first section of what is found in the images I got of what is found in the remains, which was the title of the show.
Yes.
In the Arizona desert. Now the rest of us get in airplanes, we fly over the desert, and we land and we walk and do our business. These people can't.
Yeah.
Because of our rules.
Mm.
And we have the kind of policy from Reagan onwards has destabilized Central American governments.
Mm-hmm.
And now they are so lawless.
Yeah.
That people cannot get work. If they get work, they can't keep their wages. And so they walk.
Mm.
They manage to get up to the Mexican border, and then they walk. And if they were to carry enough water for what they need, it would be too heavy for them to carry.
Yeah, so they're literally walking into the abyss.
They don't all die, but 140 a year die.
My God, appalling. Yeah.
And go one more.
That's
first.
a close up.
Yeah. The remains are found all over the place.
And they're documented.
Yeah, the police would find the remains and with the iPhone has changed the whole system of. It's like that we can do this interview without a crew of 7.
Yes.
Yeah. The iPhone has made it possible to photograph crime scenes, or in this case, there's no crime. There's these men, mostly men, died by natural causes. But if the police can still now, they can photograph them with the phones, whereas they couldn't previously. It was too expensive.
Yes.
And
I mean, is the idea to try and repatriate them?
Yeah,
to their families?
yeah. The family. Well, if a body is found, you have a duty to investigate it,
Okay.
and write it up.
Yeah.
They're not all identified,
Sure.
but where they can be identified, the body will be returned through the consul
Yes.
in Los Angeles.
Okay. Do you want to talk about that, or should we?
Well, that was the first one I made.
In that desert.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't make them in the desert. I made them in here in the room.
Yeah.
But it was the first of the series. I made them during lockdown.
Oh, did you?
It was easier enough for me because I had the 90 cases, the 90 files.
Yes.
And I could select stuff, and
so you were quite productive during lockdown.
It was good for me.
Yeah.
This one here is from I should say the earlier one I showed of the figure in the rubbish dump.
Mm-hmm.
That painting is owned by the same people who own this one, who commissioned me to make these works. The TIA Foundation, which is a private foundation, which has a massive amount of works in it. But they had a project where they asked a number of artists. The only one I knew well is Terry Allen from Santa Fe. Terry's working on it. The project was that I was to take the text of the Bible,
yes,
and find places or find images of events or whatever which corresponded to what was in the Bible. So this painting was, for me, I used the text around the good thief.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Or actually, the thieves are not divided in the Bible into good or bad. They're just thieves.
Yes.
In the text that I read, anyway.
Sure. Yeah.
Anyway, it's just, and of course, young male junkies, young male addicts, thief.
Oh, of course, yes.
That's how they make their few bob.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I asked myself, where was the state killing addicts, male addicts? And of course, Manila. The President Duarte of the Philippines made it part of his election campaign that he would deal with the addicts, he would kill them.
Did he actually say kill or deal with?
No, kill.
Yeah.
Yeah, he would. He has a unit of 200 men, police uniform, who assassinate these people.
My God.
And what they do is they come to an area at the beginning. Anyway, I'm sure they can't get away with this anymore. But at the beginning, they were coming and offering treatment. They said, we have places in a treatment for addicts. Have you any addicts living in this street?
Oh.
And that night they came and killed them. And so I went there with Colm Lina, who also was in Brazil with me, who accompanies me to these, if the place is a bit dodgy. Yes. It's good to have a companion with you. I should say that the first one I showed you, which belongs to Tia, they changed the rules for that, and they said, make me a painting of what you've learned from all your years on the planet. I learned that those children were scavenging. Yeah, that's what I learned. Yes, they're not treated equally. This is from a young man who helped me in Aleppo, who explained who blew up what. Yeah, so I got, because again, the people. There's a one-side story of good and bad, and all the destruction is by the bad, and all the people destroyed are the good. It doesn't matter where you go in a war. This is what you're given. This is what we were given in Ireland when we had our troubles. Indeed. We were given these cardboard cutouts. So it's more complex. Yeah. And this is a street. Just where you see the destruction. Yeah.
And that's a large painting, isn't it?
Yeah,
Large
yeah.
painting,
Most of these paintings that you've seen so far are they'll be 3 to 4 meters
Were they?
at the bottom.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, they'll be taller sometimes. This is of a bigger. I wanted to get on the Irish ship. I was refused. For the reason, if we let you, we'd have to let everyone.
Oh,
Like
the old story.
Yeah,
Yeah.
You think a general will
It's not you, it's us.
could come up with something better.
Yeah. So tell us what that was about.
So I wanted to. It was the people who were dying in the Mediterranean. I was very interested in capturing them because to me it was a moral question, and immigration into Europe is a moral question, which was best emphasized by Primo Levi, the Italian chemist who survived the final year of Auschwitz.
Yes,
the Jewish chemist. Yeah, and he was asked in I think in the last publication of If This Be a Day, which was
If This Be a Man.
If This Be a Man, sorry. Yeah. This book was given to me by Jack Lynch, the comic writer and performer in Dunleary when I was starting out. It really affected me. Jesus, I'd recommend it to anyone.
And this is written by an Italian chemist?
Yeah, he was a chemist who was Jewish and was arrested a year before the Auschwitz was liberated.
Right.
And he spent his life there. And he was asked the same question Theo asked me, what did you learn from being there? And he said, I learned that the human race is doomed if it privileges things over people. Eventually said it correctly.
That's very succinct, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But it's a paraphrase. He was slightly longer. But that's it. Okay. That's what he said. Yeah. He said, this is what I learned in Auschwitz. The biggest crime of the 20th century. He learned that, and that's what is happening here. Yeah. We're saying our things, they'll take our things if we let those people come in. Yeah. Yes.
So it's all about the material.
It's all about it anyway. Yeah. So much for, I used to like the EU. Anyway, this here is an interesting piece. It's again, I had finished the show in McCaffrey, which dealt with the Mexican, the drug war in Mexico. And I came back to France and I made this work here, which was of 5 men who were gunned down because they hired the wrong crew to get them over the border. They were killed by Zetas. They had obviously hired someone else. And yes, just, fuck's sake, they're only looking for work. I call them the known dead, Yes. But anyway, and this was the one that the video went on so long about. That's right. So I don't need to say anything.
No. Okay.
Yeah. And this is similar from the similar series. These are very brutal works.
They are. They're not the sort of thing you'd be hanging up in your living room. Yeah.
Mind you, there is one hanging in the living room in Dublin.
These are,
Yes.
Oh, listen, I'm not taking away. I'm really saying.
I hope he's watching. I won't out him, but I sent him the link for this morning.
Oh, did you?
I did. Yeah.
Good stuff.
Anyway.
Yeah. That's it, Brian.
Is that it?
Yeah, that's it.
That's it. Okay.
Yeah, no, because I know that there was a lot to talk about each one, so we kept it to the minimum. I'm going to talk about your earlier years now, but before I do that, I know there are a lot of artists out there who would absolutely love to see your studio.
Okay. This was built over 20 years, this place.
Yeah.
It started life as a shed.
A shed, yeah.
Breeze block. But eventually it kept getting upgraded and made it easier to work in. And eventually I got a fire in it.
That's lovely, yeah.
Of course, I put it in the wrong place.
Did you?
Yeah, it's very hard to move 3-meter works with this.
Yes.
It's very, very difficult to move them.
Yeah.
They have to be flat at some stage for stretching. But I mean, over here, these are the photographs from the police files, which I printed up and would use. This is one I was interested in making.
Very good. And let's see some of your work. You've got some of it here.
Some of it is here. Yeah, it's these two works are from the other project that's ongoing at the moment with the Missoula Art Museum, which I did a show with earlier last year. But they're doing a second piece of business with me, in that I've been working with Native American tribes or tribes, meeting families like in Juarez whose children have been killed and for whom there hasn't been an adequate criminal justice response.
Yes.
And they're both men and women in this. That's a slight change for me.
Okay.
Then I started both women.
Why is that?
Well, the organizations that I worked through were made up of families whose daughters had been killed. That was the case in Juarez. There's men are killed in Juarez at a 10-to-1 ratio. There's 10 men for every woman.
For every one woman, yeah.
And there was no organization to go work with. So I ended up working, I embedded myself in the newspaper.
Yes. And
went through their archive, and that's how I got to the story.
All right.
But these here, they've changed the name of the organization from Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women to Missing and Murdered Indigenous People.
Yes.
And it was their change, and I followed it.
And is this one part of that series?
This is part. Now, this is a small work. The small works are made for the families.
Yes.
The big works are made for the shows.
Yeah.
These two women were sisters.
All right. Yeah.
And her elder sister was killed in a hit and run. This girl died at the age of 17.
No.
She was with friends, and she was left at a stop on the motorway. The American roads have a kind of rest stop that you pull off.
Yes. Yeah.
And she was there on New Year's night.
Yeah.
And
you started late-ish in life, in the sense that you were 30 before you really started an art practice.
Yeah.
But you did go to art college.
I was in art college, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what happened in the meantime what happened in the intervening period before you took up art full time?
And, I mean, I was in the College of Art. We spent most of our time fighting with the authorities.
Yes.
We were in it. But eventually I came out at about, I think I was 25 or so, maybe sometime around at that age, or maybe a bit younger. But I came out, and I mean, I had a child at that stage.
Yes.
And I mean, I just went to work, really. I also I did drink too much at that time, and between the two jobs.
Yes.
There was no room for doing anything else. But eventually I ended up going into one of the rehabs in Dublin and came out. Kind of more common now than it was then.
Sure. Yes.
And I never looked back.
To this very day.
Yeah.
Well done, you.
Yeah, no, it was very, very useful. Hard.
And tell us a little bit about your childhood, because when we spoke, you were talking about being sort of very much excluded on a social level.
Well, no, it was peculiar, because my mother was an orphan. My mother's family had been a well-to-do family in the 1900s.
Yes.
In Wexford. He was the town clerk in Wexford. But her mother died, and then he died. And my mother was reared in she was reared by nuns. Not the best deal going at the time.
Yeah.
But anyhow, and then my father was Northern Fermanagh. You know, I was in a shop a few days ago collecting a jacket, and he said, Maguire, MAG. He said, that's very important around Fermanagh.
Oh, is it?
It defines who you are.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, it also said, you know, that there's no work for you in Fermanagh. You know?
Okay.
So the farm that my dad was born onto, his eldest brother remained. Yeah. And his two daughters married, and their families are still there. But everybody else is gone. Really, yeah. Everybody went south.
Yeah.
They had two trades that family got involved in, and one was policeman. I had an uncle, a policeman, and indeed my eldest boy is named after an RIC man who died at that time, Sean. Yeah. Anyhow, the other trade was hardware. Yeah, they all worked in hardware. In fact, his brothers had their own shops. But 1933, remember the economic war?
Yes,
that put an end to that. The shop in Ballinasloe closed, and I don't know what happened to the one in Dingle. I think it's managed to survive. Right. But he went to work for Murdoch's in Bray, where he met my mother. Yeah. And so you have these two young people coming into a town with no history. And so
and Bray in the day, and probably to a degree still is, quite a close-knit community.
Well, I mean, the way I grew up, there was we were in Florence Road, which is a rented house, a privately rented house. And he had squatted it when the nurse died upstairs, I heard, and got the whole house. They used to be rented in two flats.
Yes.
And just paid the rent. And, but you know, the only people I ever came across as I grew up, not completely the only people, but there was a one friend of my mother's who used to visit. There was my mother, I think my mother's family that were left in Ireland would visit.
Yes.
Or their relatives. My father's friends that came to the house were all from Fermanagh. Weren't from Bray.
Yeah.
Do you get me?
Oh, I do. So you were really a bit of an outsider.
You grew
really
up. Somehow you became aware of this. Yeah. Now, even though we, as kids, there was another kid, Michael Traynor, was going to. I hope he's watching too. He was going to Ravenswell with me, and we had to walk the same route. Yeah. And we became mates. Yes. You know, and we're still mates. Yeah. Good. Yeah. All those years later.
Amazing. Yeah.
Later. Yeah. You know. But there was a sense that you were smack in the middle of what was council estates, north and south of Bray. Yeah. And then the private housing between you and the tree and the sea. And you didn't belong to either. Yeah. You know, and this was made clear to me when I turned 14, you know. And
do you think that gave you a sense of inequality and justice?
Well, no, but I knew what it was to be saying, sorry, you're not welcome here.
Really, yeah.
Yeah, you'd be told that as a young person, it'll stick with you.
Yes.
And you will then, what I did was anytime I find people who aren't welcome there, well, I get going with them. If I can. I know. You know, I went into prisons, and that's the only place I found working class people at that time in education.
And you spent 20 years.
I spent 20 years
teaching in prison.
Well, I spent 15 years on the landings in Portlaoise prison, and I spent another 10 in management. Kind of wasn't that involved. Right. But I made many friends from that behaviour, from that work. Indeed. I was burying one a few days ago. Peter Pringle was one of the first men I painted. Yeah. Anyway, I worked with taught painting too, and Colin I met through that process. Yes. So yeah, the Arts Council asked me to go in, and I jumped at it because, first of all, I was politically involved with the Workers' Party at the time. Had been involved with that attitude from the very beginning, and the provosts were our enemy.
Yeah.
So what better opportunity a man ever gets than to meet his enemy in a demilitarized zone?
Exactly.
You know, so I jumped at it. I was delighted, and I changed my mind about those people. I haven't met them.
Sure.
You know,
but I think they probably didn't trust you in the beginning, did they?
well, no, they actually found out about me in 88 or 89 during that election. There was an election and a European election at the same time.
Yes.
And I was working with the Rasa during it. I did the publicity and the imagery and stuff. Yeah. Even I did them from Michael D's two campaigns. Yes. You know, so we've changed somewhat. But anyway, we're still the same, actually. But the provost found out, they saw me during the campaign, and they met me when I came back and said, listen, we've no problem with it if you've no problem with it. Yeah. And they knew the service I gave was better than one they got before. Yeah. So
that's great. Tremendous, great experience too.
So that would be my early life.
Okay. I'm going to open it up to the floor because we're moving on the time, and I'm sure that there are people who want to ask a question. Morris Quillinan says, haunting, most extraordinary interview. Thanks, Morris. John Dinan, have you captured the Northern Troubles? Yes. Would you like to answer that?
Yes. In the early, when I started painting, I started painting my own personal history, and then I started working on really the political history of what was Sinn Féin, the Workers' Party, official Sinn Féin, and that's what I did. I did stories from that background, and I never did anything else much. You know, I focused. I felt I didn't want to join the war. I didn't want my work to become a stick to bash the provost with, or for the provost to use to bash someone else with. So, and at one stage I wanted to record the death, and I went to Seamus Costello, who I knew well, his grave, to take a photograph of it. And I met the colour party of the INLA coming in. Now, how it happened that I went there at the same time that they only go there once a year. And I took that as an omen that this is too close. Yeah. It's not your story.
Yes. Yes. Interesting.
You know, you have to have a distance, which is why I work abroad.
All right. Yeah. Because I mean, most of your work is abroad.
I have a distance from the story.
And would you, just on that point, because I know you have a studio in Paris. Yeah. How much time would you spend in Paris in that studio relative to here?
About 4 months in Paris. 5 months. Yeah. And then 2 months would be traveling, and would be 5 here. Yes. I went to Paris because I hadn't had a visit from a curator here in 20 years, except for Barbara Dawson.
Really?
Yes.
Who we had on the last time. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Very good.
So I knew I would disappear if I didn't get off the island. It's a thing that we don't understand that much, is that because it's so big here, and we're so focused on ourselves. It's a fucking tiny island off the north of Europe. The business is elsewhere.
Absolutely, absolutely. And some artists will recognize that. Yeah. Jane German says, fascinating.
How are you, Jane? Yeah. I knew Jane when we were very young.
Did you? Yeah.
We did, yeah.
Brenda Moore McCann says, what artist do you look to? What artist did you look to as a young artist? Who was your inspiration?
I looked at Monk. I looked at Baker, and I looked at Keenholm.
Yes.
Can I ask?
Yes.
Hello, good morning, Alan. Barbara here. Brian, just want to, hello, well done. I'll just ask Brian, the material, when is your next exhibition?
The next exhibition is on the 3rd of March in the Carolan Gallery in Dublin. And I think I've worked with the Hugh Lane in a number of years. They put on a show from Portlaoise Prison.
Oh, did they?
They did.
Yeah.
You know, around the time that the Good Friday Agreement was happening. You know.
Yes.
But they're putting on a show of mine in May 25, which is which would be the next one in Dublin.
Yes.
So
before that, you've got one in Paris starting next month, haven't you?
No.
Oh, I thought you had.
No, it's in
Dublin.
No, it's in
No, I know that, but
Sao
before that.
Paulo. Sao Paulo.
Ah, okay.
I'm in Sao Paulo next month.
Ah, there you go.
Yeah, and we'll be in this year. Also, we'll be in Bergen in the Kunstfall 14.3 or 3.14, I think it is.
Okay.
There.
All right.
Brian represented Ireland in Sao Paulo when was it? In the Sao Paulo Biennale in 1998, wasn't it?
Yes, it was 98.
Yeah. And I went out with Brian to that, and he talked about the favelas and representing the people in the favelas. And this exhibition, Brian, is what's the topic of this exhibition in Sao Paulo? Is it the Amazon?
It's at the favela. It's called the house that Vladimir built. It's about one man who came from the northeast, like I spoke, but built his house in the favela and kept extending it as his family grew. And now his grandchildren live there. So my contribution, it's a 3-person show with James Conca and Robert Chase Heishman. But what I do in it is a painting. I actually have the painting here. Yeah. This is the yellow house is the house that Vladimir built. And I accompany it with a series of drawings of himself and his wife and his grandchildren. So, that's Sao Paulo.
Fabulous, yeah. Right.
Is that okay, Barbara?
Yeah, that's good. I'd just like to say, Alan, to all the listeners that Brian will have a show in the Curlin, and it's a really nice space to see Brian's work. It's up the stairs, which some people might say, oh God, can I go in here? But I haven't seen what he's going to show there, but I really would recommend people to call in. They're very friendly in there, and it's lovely to see the work in the flesh. I'm looking forward to, because I haven't seen Brian's work now for a while, apart from the ones we have in Hugh Lane Gallery.
Barbara, thank you so much for that.
Not at all.
Wilma Vissers, I think,
Can I ask?
How do you? Oh, sorry, you asked the question yourself.
I've seen the images now, and I'm really shocked by it. And because it's really quite gruesome as well. How do you cope with all those awful news and all those images?
It's interesting that, first of all, in interviewing the families about the murders of their daughters, it's very emotional.
Yeah.
But it's not mine, it's theirs. I've got to remember that.
Okay.
Whatever pain I come across, it's worse for the people that visit.
Oh yes, of course. If you remember that, then it's good for you. You can cope with that.
And secondly, when I go to do the work, I try to make it beautiful. Remember, with the killing of the women and the Native Americans, the images represent the life that was taken. Not how it was taken.
Yes,
with
you
men
honor.
and whereas it was how it was taken.
Yeah, you honor them with
Different jobs.
Yeah.
You know, so you do your best. Also, but for both paintings, the principles of beauty apply.
Okay. Yeah.
And you know, to me, it's my work. It's a work, and working is beneficial. It's therapeutic. It's excellent. It's what we all like to do.
Yeah.
It's work, you know. But this is not, you know. And also, I work for myself. I don't work for anyone else.
Okay, that's good.
So in all those ways, I help me survive. You know, I recognize, but I would prefer to tell these stories than the stories disappear.
Yeah. That's good. That's a good goal.
Somebody asked me about people who influenced me. Marlon Duma is an influence.
Okay.
Who works out of Amsterdam. Just
Yes.
recognizing where you're
Yeah.
calling from.
Yeah. Yeah, Marlene Dumas, you mean?
Yeah.
And with William Kentridge, Brian.
Not as much, but yes, yeah, not as much. I love him. I look at his work and his films. Yeah, but what I like about Duma is her painting.
Yeah, they're beautiful.
Yeah.
Incredible. Yes.
Stephanie McLaughlin asks, does Brian work on plein air or from photographic images?
Mostly, almost entirely photographic images. Yeah. Occasionally I do portraits of the living, very occasionally, but mostly it's images now.
Okay. Anybody else got a question? If you don't, please put your mute button on, because there's a bit of rumbling going on there, which I'm sure you're probably not aware of. So if you're not talking to us, please just mute yourself. Okay.
Could I just jump in?
Yes, of course. Who's that?
This is Brenda.
Brenda. Hi, Brenda. Yes.
Hey, Brenda.
Yeah. Hello, Brian, and really nice to see you again.
Yes.
I just, it's a comment, I suppose, maybe you'd like to respond. It seems to me that when you started out, you were dealing with subject matter. I know you've dealt with mental hospitals as well as the prisons. And at that time, I think it might have been difficult to get a good response from the art establishment because these were difficult subjects, and but you had the courage and the humanity to want to talk about them at a time when it may not have been comfortable for people to see these works or to address these subjects.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I've known mental illness in my family, so it's not a strange place. Secondly, I mean, I did a day room in Derry in Grantia Hospital. I remember this is a nice story because it touches on establishment and the mental hospital. I painted the nurse because I figured if I painted the nurse, I set up an easel in the middle of the day room in the mental institution, and once I painted her, everybody else, well, a lot of other people sat for me, and as those people died, the pictures were with their families, and their families expressed, they were very happy to have this image, and that was a kind of confirmation that came much later. It was a risk for me because I didn't know if, they gave me permission to show this work. But people, remember, some of them were, Thatcher was in power and the people were being moved out of the hospitals. They were closing down them and they were going into a flat. Mm. And I used to have the system then, I would photograph the painting in the flat on its own. But this woman stood into the photo and she folded her arms and she was as proud as punch beside the photo, beside the picture. And I'm looking at this and I have no written permission from her or her relatives to photograph her. But do I tell her, get out of there, you don't have the right to stand in? Or do I say, no, Jesus, that woman has just done something, so she has the right to do it? So I photographed her and made the light boxes from those. And that was the risk. That was the only risk involved. And they were shown in the Hugh Lane, 4 portraits and 2 small light boxes. And I got a letter from a woman who was an American, who said that she'd been with a group and she had come to Ireland and she got separated from the group, and that she had wandered into the Hugh Lane and she had discovered these works, that she'd spent half her life in institutions. And this was the first time she'd ever seen the likes of her acknowledged. And that was, you know, you can take the other part I'd tell you about when we were doing it. This is unfortunately against your profession, I think. When we were doing it in Grantia Hospital, the two senior psychiatrists present would come through the door like battering rams. They were small and round, and they had huge bags. And they'd fly through the door at 5 o'clock. And they looked at the light boxes. And one said to the other, "Who's paying for this?" And off they went. I remember the woman who was the cleaner, who cleaned the light boxes for me. And I asked her, I said, "What do you think of this?" She said, "It's great." So I came to the conclusion that understanding art is in inverse proportion to your wages. Also, my great pride in that project was Lord Grantia, not a man I'd be very fond of, was taken down and the light boxes put up. I'm afraid the victory was only temporary because Lord Grantia came back and the light boxes were put in the coal scuttle. So that's the story of working with a mental institution. I was glad to do it. I enjoyed, I mean, there's certain medication you get which causes your mouth to become very dry, and you'll be doing this. Your jaw will be working the whole time, making it very difficult to catch the guy as a portrait, you know, because movement is not something you can put into a portrait. You know, it's still, you look for a still image. And but that we got over it. I enjoyed the job. And indeed, the director of Grantia Hospital at the time had trained in an art school. He trained with Declan McGonigal, and he knew what we were about. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks very much, Brenda. Humanity loud. Yes, Tim Goulding says humanity loud and clear.
Thank you, Tim.
Yeah.
We started together in the same gallery.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Up in Stephen's Green.
Yes. Owen McLaughlin, wonderful, inspiring interview. Thank you.
Thank you.
Stephanie, thank you.
Brian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I know this.
How are you? I just want to say it's wonderful to hear you.
There you are. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Oh,
I just love the way you can get to the essence of the story and really tell it. But your art hasn't lost out on that. You have a tremendous freshness still in that art and that story that you're telling. It is like we don't see it in your studio. We see it as we are there. And I just thank you very much for telling it so well this morning. It's great. It's good to see you.
You never asked me about my education.
No.
I got it from him.
Ah, did you?
He was teaching
Really? Yeah.
a Bauhaus course in Theory Tech.
Ah, okay. Yes.
Based on the Thinking Eye, Paul Klee, and other stuff.
Mm,
And that always gave me the
Oh, right.
confidence to paint.
Very good.
Because
Yes.
we learned from him.
Yeah.
The exercises he brought us through, which were often designed by Klee,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Great.
Grounding.
Yeah.
Thanks, Brian. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, and thank you, Owen. Thanks very much for that. Anybody else got a final comment or question? No, look, I think we leave it there because we're running on time, and Brian is under a bit of time pressure also.
No, I'm not.
You are a bit now, Brian. Ask Jenny, she'll tell you. Anyway, listen, thank you all for watching what has been a most inspiring and challenging subject, I think, in a lot of ways. But you know, Brian has a wonderful way of putting things into perspective. And his work, I mean, just looking at it physically here, is absolutely stunning. I mean, you could sit for hours just staring at it. So, Brian, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a million. You're very good. Thank you.
Yeah.
And thank you all for watching. I'm sorry if I missed out on any of your questions. And Owen, I'm sorry we lost you there. But thank you all, and we'll see you in probably 2 weeks' time and let you know who the guest will be. So take care and see you soon. All right?
Yeah.
Take care. Bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you.
Bye.